My wife and I have been married now, well, as of now, we've been married a little over 10 years, so coming up on our 10-year anniversary. So prior to having Jaxon, we had a couple pregnancy challenges, and then eventually got pregnant with Jaxon. And even all through utero and through those 9 months, everything was looking really good on our scans. Ultrasounds were checking out.
And then Jaxon was born a couple weeks early, at about 37 and a half weeks, and normal delivery. Everything seemed fine, and then from a physical standpoint, we visually could see when Jaxon came out that there was some issues. He had a ridge along his forehead. The doctors had told us, oh, you're really small, it's how he came out the birth canal, don't worry, all of that will go away.
Well, a week went by and the ridge went nowhere. Still regular checkups with his pediatrician. A week and a half went by, and my brother, who is a neuroradiologist, saw the ridge and said, guys, let's bring him in for a CAT scan. Not a big deal. You just want peace of mind, as any good parent wants.
We did a CAT scan and determined that Jaxon had craniosynostis of the metopic suture. So that suture right here at the top of your head had prematurely fused, and the bone had started to actually grow and push on the brain. It was extremely scary to receive this kind of diagnosis, especially when you're thinking about anything with the brain. There were some other anomalies that were going on. He had undescended testicles and hypospadias, so urologically, Jaxon had really bad, horrible reflux. So every time we tried to feed him, he was vomiting, and it was awful.
It was like, okay, this is significant. This is cranial reconstructive surgery is needed. And my wife and I said, how do we research this issue on a worldwide level and figure out how to give our son the absolute best care possible? And all fingers in all directions were pointed, honestly, towards Nicklaus Children and to two individuals in particular that operate out of the Miami campus, Dr. Perlin and Dr. Patia, being pediatric plastic surgeon and pediatric neurologist.
Jaxon had a condition called craniosynostis, where the shape of his head was deformed. You may have seen a Halloween skull, where you see the little squiggly lines between the bones. Those lines are the sutures, we call them. And it's what lets the bones slide apart in the skull, like I'm showing with my hands. If our skull couldn't grow as our brain was growing, it would be like a shoe that was too tight for a foot that was growing.
First thing that was very important was getting Jaxon to a fighting weight to be able to have such a rigorous procedure. We needed to get him to 15 pounds, which took a lot, especially because of all of his gastro issues that he had going on. But we got there, and it was the scariest time of my entire life. Leading up to that procedure, we see Dr. Perlin, we see Dr. Patia. They come in and check Jaxon out. Then they whisked Jaxon away. It was the hardest thing I probably have ever done in my entire life, especially being a new mom.
This is a major operation that we perform. It involves making an incision that essentially goes to ear, and we literally remove the face down and take the soft tissue and the muscles and the nerves out of the way. It's quite remarkable. So we are looking just at the skeleton. When you lift the bones off, you see the actual brain sort of squished into the position it was forced to be. Within minutes, the brain will put itself back into the right position. We remodel the skull. We put it back together with plates and screws like a carpenter would, except they're made of an amazing technology where they dissolve, so there's no hardware left in the kids. We put everything back where it should be, and we sew it up. And it's unbelievable that a few hours later, we get to hand parents their baby with essentially their new face and their new outlook to the world.
Dr. Perlin came out, pulled us over, said, everything we did took a little bit longer. It was a bit more intense than we were expecting, but ultimately the surgery went according to plan. And when he walked out, my head was in my hands, and that was the moment of, I'll use the term relief, even though I'm not even sure that's the right term, but that was a moment of relief. Like, all right, we're on the other side of this thing now.
So all of these different components of the different parts of the body ultimately led Dr. Bhatti and Dr. Perlin suggesting to us that we consider speaking with a geneticist, which led us to Dr. Bauer, who is also part of Nicklaus. And at about a year old, we saw Dr. Bauer. We all did some pretty serious DNA testing, which ultimately led us to finding out that Jaxon had a mutation on CDK13.
CDK stands for cyclic dependent kinase, number 13. This has to do with something very early in development of a child, and that's why we are seeing things in the brain or the skull, some the heart, the kidneys, testicles. So it's a gene, a very important gene in early development. So we found that Jaxon has a de novo, it's called new. So it means it happened at the time of conception. Mommy and daddy do not have it. It's on chromosome 7. Remember, we have a pair of chromosome 7. So at the time of conception, the change happened. So yeah, there's very little information about this condition, about the CDK13 gene variant. There are not many cases. Last time I checked, there were maybe like between 250, 300 cases. We know that, and as a geneticist, most of our children have any genetic change will have some developmental issues. So what we can do with these children is therapy. I usually tell my parents we need therapy, 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 love, 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 therapy, therapy, therapy. So we start with physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, because we definitely know that stimulating the brain is elastic, these kids progress. I think he's going to be able to move on, go to school, graduate, and we'll take it from there.
When you meet Jax, he's gonna not only introduce himself, but he's gonna probably give you a hug. He has just the biggest heart of anyone I know, and nothing seems to faze him. All of this stuff, through all of these medical challenges that he's gone through, he's never once complained about any of it.
Thank you to my doctors and my nurses.